And we get ready to go back to class, and we walk out in my driveway, and my truck, for some reason, has rolled down the hill. Hi, I'm Zane with Zane Engineers Life. So it's Friday story time, and let's get right to it. Anyone ever been in a jam? I mean, have you ever been in a spot where you really just needed somebody to step in and help you out? Have you ever had to ask anyone to help you out of a jam right there on the spot? Like, there was a really good Reddit thread not long ago where a guy's out on a date, and he can tell this girl he's with might not be there for the right reasons. And the menus come, and she immediately turns to the most expensive stuff on the menu. And the waiter guy walks up, and he looks at the girl, and he looks at the guy, and he makes eye contact with the guy, and he looks at the menu, and the girl immediately asks for lobster and more of the most expensive stuff on the menu. Well, the waiter looks back at the guy, and then he tells the girl, "Sorry, we're out of lobster tonight. Maybe you should try one of the sandwiches. They're really good." Now, this is a silly example, but it moves us into our story for the day. So here we go. I'm an 11th grader in high school, and a friend and I decided one day that, we're just going to skip class and go to my house and shoot some pool and maybe have a few beverages. And then we're just going to try to make it back for fourth period English class. Now, why fourth period English class, you ask? Well, MILF wasn't a term back then, but Miss Terman definitely was one. She was an amazing teacher and amazingly cool and super, super hot. So while you might miss history class or trigonometry, you definitely weren't missing Miss Terman's English class if you could help it. So anyway, we go by my house and we're hanging out and we're shooting pool. And we're doing what high school dudes do. We're wasting time talking trash. And we get ready to go back to class and we walk out in my driveway and my truck, for some reason, has rolled down the hill and smashed this split rail fence into about 22 billion pieces. Now, why anyone would have a split rail fence, I have no idea. They look terrible, they fall apart, and well, just look them up on Google Images and you'll see. Okay, so truck is down the hill and split rail fence is smashed. Now, this is not good for many reasons. One, we're not supposed to be there. Two, if there's one thing in this world my mom loved, it was her split rail fence. Three, if you've ever touched a split rail fence, it literally disintegrates into 3 million pieces right in front of you. And there's really no way to get it back looking the way it used to look. And four, again, we're not supposed to be there, we're supposed to be in class. Now, my mom had a temper and my dad worked construction, and he really only had one main rule, and that was you never, ever, 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 ever miss school for any reason whatsoever. I mean, if I tried to stay home from school, I'd need about 114-degree fever and projectile vomiting to even get considered. Then I'd be bedridden with no TV, and I'm old, no Atari, no Commodore 64, no TV, and obviously if I was too sick for school, I was too sick to be playing video games. Okay, so here I am, truck down the hill, busted split rail fence, and the clock is ticking to make it back to Miss Terman's English class. Well, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation where your parents are going to kill you, but it does interesting things to you. So me and my buddies spring into action. And I worked construction with my dad, and I had a bunch of tools, and I was kind of handy with my hands. So we got to work. And literally within 5 to 10 minutes, we have this split rail fence that was busted into 1 million pieces. It's put back together, and it's glued and nailed and screwed into this kind of conglomeration that looks sort of like a split rail fence. And if you really weren't paying attention to it or looking directly at it, it might just pass for how it looked earlier that morning. All right, so no issues. We're in the clear. We've got things back together, and there's just enough time to get everything back together and get back to school and slide back into Miss Terman's English class. So we get in my truck, and we turn the key, and nothing happens. Uh-oh. The truck's not cranking, and we have no idea what's going on, and we definitely don't have time for this. And so we get out, and we pop the hood of the truck, and we can't really find anything obvious that's wrong. And suddenly we look up, and across the street is our neighbor. Now, he's a senior in high school, and he's on the early release for work, and he just happens to be pulling in his driveway. Well, we start dancing and waving our arms like we're on fire, and we're yelling and hollering for him to come over. And he sees us, and super slowly, at the speed of like Glacier, meanders his car over to my driveway. And we're like, dude, we need some help. Can you get us back to school as fast as possible? Well, he drove a Grand National, which was a pretty fast car in its day. So we're set. We're going to make it. We close the hood of my truck. We set everything up as best we can. The split rail fence is back. It's still there. And we head to school. Now, there's just one main issue, right? When my parents went to work that morning, my truck was not there, and I was off at school. And they knew that I had something to do after school, so there was really absolutely no reason on earth for my truck to be there without me there. So I'm stressing a little bit. What am I going to do? What in the world am I going to say? What's going to happen? So after taking back roads and maxing out at about 103 miles an hour, we swept into the back of the school, and my buddy and I run to class, and I slide into Miss Terman's English class just as the bell rings. Okay, we're good, right? Except for the truck sitting in the driveway that I really don't have an explanation for, and my parents are going to kill me when I get there. So as you can imagine, I'm a little stressed, and I'm not really paying a whole lot of attention in class that day. And did I mention Miss Terman was a really good teacher? Well, we're doing some classwork, and I'm not really into it. And normally I'm a pretty good student, or at least I'm participating in the conversation in the hopes that one day I can date Miss Terman. Well, she comes back to my desk, and I sit in the back of the class, and she comes back there, and she leans over, and now I'm completely distracted. But wait a minute, let me get back focused. What's up? All right, Miss Terman's in front of me, and I think she's asking me a question. So she's like, Zane, what's wrong? You don't seem like yourself. And so here I was. I'm hosed. I'm toast. My parents are going to kill me. I'm not paying attention in class. And suddenly in front of me is this authority figure that's probably not going to help me. But you know what? I'm a gambler, so I decide to roll the dice. I say, Miss Terman, let's say hypothetically something went down that wasn't supposed to. And let's just say hypothetically in this situation that for some reason this hypothetical person's truck was suddenly at their house when it wasn't supposed to be there. And let's just say hypothetically that their parents were going to get home before they were, and their truck was going to be there, and it was going to be an extremely big problem. And if you heard about this hypothetical situation, what do you think you would do? Well, without missing a beat, she immediately said, well, we know this situation would never happen because everybody is at school all day, and they know that's where they're supposed to be. But let's just say this hypothetically happened. Well, does this hypothetical person know anyone that lives close to them that doesn't have a truck? Now, in my stressed out brain and being completely distracted by this amazingly hot teacher in front of me, I have no idea what in the world this even remotely means. But then I stop and I try to refocus for a moment. So I think, and I'm like, yeah, I think I know someone that lives by and that doesn't have a truck. And Miss Thurman is like, you mean the hypothetical person might know somebody? And I'm like, yeah, sure, of course. She's like, well, if someone were to ask this hypothetical person about this situation, it seems they might just mention that so-and-so borrowed their truck to move something, and they were just going to catch a ride with someone else home. Wow. I'm thinking that's a pretty solid idea. Then she says, now the key is going to be getting a hold of that person and making sure that they needed the truck that day so that everything is all tidied up and has a nice pretty bow on it. And with that, she walks her amazing self away. Now, did she have to help me? No. Did she see right through my hypothetical scheme? Yes. Did she throw me a lifeline to a dude that was probably going to get killed that day? Yes. Did the story work? Well, here's the funny thing. So my mom could smell out shenanigans miles away, and she usually knew what I had done before I'd even actually done it. So as you can imagine, when I got home that day, I was immediately asked, hey Zane, I noticed your truck was here when I got home, but you got home later. Is there anything I need to know about? Well, I had caught a ride home with a friend, and I had stopped by my neighbor's house and given them the hypothetical situations, and now they hypothetically might actually have been the person that needed to borrow that truck, right? Because they knew my mom had a pretty good temper, and they were trying to help me out. So I told her, oh, so-and-so borrowed my truck earlier to move something, and I caught a ride home with so-and-so. And you know what? It worked. Miss Terman was smoking hot, and it worked. I wasn't going to die that day. Well, there was still one lingering problem. Remember the split rail fence? Here's the cool part. Mom didn't ask me about it until a couple of days later when a storm blew through and her precious split rail fence blew down the hill and it blew away a bunch of leaves and things, and now there was a completely intact split rail fence laying in the ditch and a couple of tire tracks that may or may not have been from a truck. So I just happened to be out in the yard when my mom was out there, and she was doing some work in an area, and she asked me, "Hey, you got any idea what happened to my split rail fence?" And I said, "Wow, that must have been a heck of a storm last night to have blown this sucker down." And there's those moments where your life just kind of hangs in the balance, and you're not really sure what's going to happen next, whether you're going to live or die. Well, a moment or two go by, and my mom turned and walked away, and she said, "Yeah, must have been some storm." Okay, so moral of the story. If you see someone who's in bad shape and in a bad spot and in a big bind, and you've got some way to help them out, of course, without being an accessory to a crime or helping them do something they really shouldn't be doing, I want you to help them out. You never know when you're going to be in that situation, and we've all got to be there for one another. And second thing, and really if you missed everything else in the story today, I hope you take this one piece. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It might be a job, it might be in life, you might be depressed, you might be broke, you may just not be able to do it today. Don't let pride and ego get in the way. Reach out, roll those dice, and ask for help. See, throughout my life, I've been pleasantly surprised over and over and over again by people like the amazingly hot Miss Turman stepping in to help me. And I've done the same. Dude's $1 short at the cash register, I got you. Karen just yelled at you while you were trying to wait tables to have enough money to eat, well, extra money is about to be in your tip. Lost your job, I got you. Actually, I just had a guy come by the office earlier today, fresh out of prison looking for work. And while we don't install HVAC, I definitely connected him with somebody that does. You gotta help people out when they're in a jam. See, don't be afraid to ask for help. We are fools to do this life alone. Don't be afraid to help someone in a bind. We are duty bound to help each other. It's what makes us human. I'm Zane with Zane Engineers Life, and we'll make you better.